Story 1. Am I the a-hole for wanting my fiance's stepdad to walk me down the aisle? My fiance and I have been together for 6 years, and we're getting married in May. My fiance's stepfather married his mom when he was 3 and raised him like his own. His mom died from breast cancer when he was a teenager, but his stepdad let him stay at home until he was 26 and even trained him to be a mechanic like himself. I have a lot of respect for his stepdad raising a child that's not his own and helping us both when we needed it. He co-signed for our first place because neither of us had regular jobs and income, and when he bought a place, he and my fiance did all the renovations. He is a great guy and lives with rescued 4 dogs. I'm Chinese American, so the idea of a stepdad, it's not really in the culture. Being as close as a bio-dad is unfathomable, but I can see that they are close as if they were blood related. My bio-father is a deadbeat to me. He dated my mom when they were both young and then left when I was born. He didn't give us money and my mom never asked, which is crazy if you ask me. I found out after I was an adult that he never wanted me, but she did and felt guilty because he wanted her to get rid of me. So it's not like he wanted me to exist. He visited me a few times in my childhood, but never let us see his other family, so I have singling friends I only met when I was older. My mom and I were pretty poor growing up. We had government aid, and when I got older, I realized my half-siblings were raised in a middle-class home, and my mom and I suffered for very little reason. So I have no reason to want my bio-father to walk me down the aisle. When my bio-father found out about the wedding he offered, I pretty rudely declined. I was mad at my mom for telling him, but she thought I should forgive and let him walk me down the aisle because no matter how much my fiance's stepdad helped, he isn't family. I don't consider my bio-father's family either. I mean, anyone who knows me in this channel knows how I'm going to side. Absolutely, you get to choose your own family. And if your biological father has not wanted to be a part of your life your whole life and has made no efforts, you don't even owe inviting him to the wedding, let alone having him walk you down the aisle, whereas your boyfriend's stepdad has been an integral part of your life. So yes, absolutely, that's such a wonderful gesture. It warms my heart that you would want him to walk you down the aisle. Even if it wasn't a stepfather, if it was just a friend that you had had for many years who had been so important in your life and you wanted them to walk you down instead of your biological father, I'd say yes to that. It's your wedding, you get to choose, and it should involve the people important to you, and your biological father isn't, and that's okay. Story 2. Dad calls the cops on me for being scared of wasps. For context, this story happened a couple of years ago. I, 22 female, have since moved out and am happily living with my partner, 20 female. So, as the title states, I have a phobia of wasps. Now, this isn't just an ick or a small fear, this is a full-blown panic-inducing phobia, and I've had it for as long as I can remember. Anytime I see a wasp, no matter how far away from me it is, I will do anything I can to get as far away from it as possible. If one flies near me or is in my immediate vicinity, I will start to shake, cry, hyperventilate, and if it gets any closer, I will start screaming and flailing much like a child. It's incredibly embarrassing and humiliating, especially out in public. I've tried my best to control it, but nothing so far has helped. It might be worth mentioning I'm also autistic, so I struggle deeply with emotional regulation due to my disability. My wasp phobia has always been a huge nuisance, especially to the people around me. And trust me, my family made sure I knew about it. As a young child, I was constantly reminded of how I ruined family outings, how my family could never take me outside, how I would be spanked for having panic attacks, etc. On top of that, my dad and his brother loved to torment me about it when I was little. They would jab at me in the head and make buzzing noises to startle me. They would tell me there were nests/wasps nearby to make me scream and cry. And then when I got to the point of crying, they would make fun of me for being such a crybaby. So needless to say, my wasp phobia isn't necessarily all about wasps. There's some PTSD attached to it as well. Enough with the sad backstory though, and on to the main event. A couple of years ago, I was almost 21 at the time, my mom and I had just returned from the grocery store. We pulled into the driveway, and beside the driveway, in front of my parents' house, stood a big oak tree. Wasps do tend to hang around by that tree, of course, for the wood. At that point, I'd gotten myself to ignore them as long as they didn't bother me. This time, however, there were a whole bunch of them swooping and buzzing around the car. My mom asked me to get out and help her with the groceries, and I asked her to go ahead and start, and I'd join her once I calmed down from my nerves about the wasps. My mom chose to stay in the car with me to help me calm down. I cannot stress this enough. My mom was not trapped in the car with me. She was only trying to help and would have removed herself from the situation at any time. My dad was in the front yard and noticed I wasn't getting out. He came up to the door and tried to open it. Of course, I screamed and held it shut, considering wasps were flying directly by the door. My mom told him to go away, she could handle it, she was trying to calm me down, and all he was doing was making me more upset. Now my panic was beginning to turn into an autism meltdown. I felt trapped and like I couldn't escape. My dad came back a few minutes later and tried once again to open the door. I freaked out and started crying, begging him to leave me alone. He obliges and goes away. A few moments later, I begin to calm down and go to get out of the car so I can make a beeline, pun intended, for the garage. Keep in mind that there's still very much a large sum of wasps zipping back and forth around the car. Right as I'm about to open the door, my dad emerges with his phone up to his ear. He comes up to the door and pounds on the window, which startles me into not wanting to open it again. He forces the door open and informs me, as I'm starting to fall back into my meltdown, that he's calling the police to have me forcibly removed from the car. This, of course, terrifies me enough to immediately get me out of the car. I burst into tears, begging him to hang up as I jumped out of the car and ran into the house, wasps forgotten. I was beyond embarrassed and humiliated. I felt like a child. My mom was livid. I could hear her yelling at him as I ran in. I locked myself in the bathroom, feeling like I was going to vomit. I allowed myself to cry and have my meltdown for a few minutes and then tried to calm down. My dad knocked on the door and told me it was my fault he called the police, that I deserved what he had tried to do, and that I was going to be the one explaining to the police that I was too wimpy towards a few wasps to get out of the car if he'd ended up calling them. I didn't respond. I didn't respond to him at all for 2 days. After a couple days of the silent treatment, he told me that if I wanted to treat him so badly for being a loving and caring father, that I wasn't allowed to have privileges in the house anymore, and he was taking my car away, essentially trying to lock me down like a child. Given the fact that this was a tactic he'd been using my whole life, I gave in to him and things went back to normal, if you can even call it that. As I said before, I've since moved out and I am far away from that situation. I still can't believe anybody in their right mind would call the police on an autistic person who was having a moment of distress, especially considering I wasn't hurting anybody, myself or anybody else. My mom wasn't trapped in there with me either, like my dad tried to claim. She had free will to leave the car at any time. Very glad to now be living with my girlfriend, who is very patient and kind with me about my phobia. It's a work in progress, and the police incident set me back drastically, but I'm slowly getting better. Long story short, my dad was so desperate for a power trip that he came down on me with an iron fist about a situation that he wasn't involved in or asked to become involved in. Your dad is a piece of crap. Your dad is a bad dad. He is just a bad dad. I'm making that call, just based on this stuff. I know I don't know everything about him, but the fact that you're on the spectrum, and you are dealing with a severe phobia, and he has chosen your whole life to tease you about it, frighten you constantly, and then to go to this extent, just tells me that he's not a great dad. He's a piece of crap for doing this kind of stuff. Also, I'm calling the police because the police should, if I was a police officer, which never, but I would have arrested the dad for being like, nope, you can't call the police on something like this. This is a misuse of our time. Like, what an a-hole. What a complete prick. Why are some parents like that? Why are some people like this? And then, I did this out of love. No, you didn't. You did it out of a power trip because you probably have no power anywhere else in your life. You are desperately grasping at control over these people because in your job and with your friend group, they all recognize you as the pathetic person you are, desperately grasping at any little thing that can make you feel like you have power. instead of just being a good, kind person, not caring about that stuff and living an altogether better life. You make people around you more miserable. Do better. Story 3. You are fired for obeying my rules. Please stay until we can replace you, though. It was 2005, and the lady I had met over the internet, having visited me in Australia, and me visiting her in the USA, and meeting her folks and all that, she had now come to be with me, and we had married. But since arriving to stay, she had a lot of problems, as her vocational college degree was not recognized in Australia, leaving her with difficulties getting a job. She was determined and flexible, though, and did some temp jobs, clerical and receptionist kind of things, using skills she had learned while working at college as a librarian. She finally got a real job as a receptionist/clerk at a company that brokered loans, and she got on with things. One thing that was always a problem was that sales reps/sharks would have their clients come in and they would tell the woman to make coffees for them. This wasn't part of their role. So my wife and coworkers were told that they were not to do that. It was up to the salesperson to make the coffee for themselves and clients. This was part of an initiative to try to retain women in these roles, as they didn't tend to stay long in what was something of an archaic office. So my wife is working as a salesman. They called them financial advisors, but they were the credit business version of the used car salesman class. The client came in and she buzzed the guy. He comes out and says to her to make them both coffee. She tried to be discreet, but said that he knew she couldn't do that. He blew up, went to her supervisor, and she told my wife to make the coffees. Later, she had her in the office and fired her. Yep, she was fired for trying to do as she was told, the opposite of malicious, I guess. But the karma comes in anyway. She was fired, but asked to stay on until they got another person to replace her. For the next 2 months, she continued to go to work, now able and ready to refuse anything she didn't want to do, especially coffee making. The same guy tried once, and she said no, so fire me. LOL. They could not find a replacement. Word of their issues at that company had got around the receptionist/clerical field locally. First off, folks, if people tell you that you can't do something or whatever, you get that crap in writing. Make sure it's on your work contract or your whatever lists your duties and what you are and are not supposed to do. Have them send you an email. Be like, hey, that rule, could you send me an email about it? And you hang on to that and you use that crap. Because if they try and fire you for stuff that they told you specifically to do, usually you can either present that and be like, what? Or it might help you legally. You may actually have a legal case against some of these people and the crap that they do. So hang on to that stuff. And also, that place sounds miserable if they're going to be like that and fire someone over that. Good Lord. So I hope that this person's wife has found a better job, which could not have been that hard from the sound of it. Story 4. Today, I effed up by accidentally revealing to my friend that he may be the other man. I'm a part of a small 200 people Discord server. It's a great place, and I've made some amazing friends. We're all close and help each other out. Where I effed up was that one of the other members in the group messaged me asking if I had been in touch with another member recently. I hadn't spoken to her or seen her online in a long time and told him that. He told me that she had broken her phone and he'd been trying to get in contact with her because they're in a long-distance relationship. This was totally news to me. I had no clue they were dating, but he and I chatted a little more, and I told him if I heard from her, I'd let him know. A few hours later, I saw that she was online, and I sent her a message saying, "Your man is looking for you." She responded right away saying she knew she had a broken phone and had just gotten a new one. She hasn't spoken to anyone yet and has had a rough past few weeks. She and I are having a chat. My late boyfriend and I started a long distance, so we were talking a bit about how hard it is. She says they've been together 2 years and she's not putting pressure on him to meet up because he has to come from Canada and that he's so important to her and she doesn't want to F anything up. She had a crush on him forever before they made it official. Fast forward to later in the day and he messaged me again asking if I'd heard anything. Yeah, I talked to her this morning. She hasn't gotten a hold of you? He's completely shocked that I talked to her and that she didn't try to reach him and asked me what was said. So I gave him the Cliff Notes version. Wait, what? Canada? What are you talking about? Turns out my friend is from Texas, and they haven't been together anywhere close to 2 years. He asked me if his name was mentioned at all. I looked back at the conversation with her and said no, it hadn't. I said, your man and your boyfriend. Otherwise, we both just referred to him as he. Is there someone else? No, there can't be, right? She didn't question why I was reaching out to her, saying that her man was looking for her. It has to be you, or else I'm really confused. But as confusing as that was, the facts were there. He doesn't live in Canada, and they have known each other less than a year. She wasn't talking about him, and I accidentally exposed it. I feel like a giant a-hole for upsetting him, for causing issues, and for ruining their relationship. It's super messed up that she has another relationship all along, but this was such a terrible way for him to find out, and I hate that it went down like this. Too long didn't read. I accidentally messaged my friend things his girlfriend said about how much she cares for another man because I thought she was talking about him. I think I ruined their relationship / exposed her for having another boyfriend. Okay, I'm gonna put your mind at ease here. You didn't ruin anything. She did. By having a second boyfriend and not telling and basically cheating, I guess. Yeah, I'm sorry. You did nothing wrong. You relayed some messages. She didn't ask for clarification, This is 100% on her. Also, if she was, cheating and he was the other guy, would she not, be aware, oh God, there's 2 of them. Maybe I shouldn't give up information. Oh, cheaters, why are you always so clueless about stuff? You don't think. I mean, obviously, you're cheating. It's not smart or cool to begin with, but you always end up just doing so much dumber stuff. So, yeah, no, person who wrote this, you're fine. You did everything right. You can't know things that you don't know. You're not psychic. You don't see into the future. You're A-okay. This other person, however, probably going to have some problems that she brought on herself. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.